Hello, everybody. It is 4:06 p.m. We are gathered for a study session on the new police drones Arctic system. Thrilled that we are all here. And Mr. Wick, do you have this item? You want me to kind of straight to Chief Brady?
You're ready for Chief Brady.
All right, Chief Brady.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for coming in early to hear about the Arctic. Before I talk about the Arctic, I'd like to introduce my team in case anyone doesn't know some of them, but Commander Jason Ammon has been leading the charge on this. Patty from legal, been heavily involved. Chase Amos, our public information officer. Bridget Roberts is our business analyst, so she's been keeping us on track. And then of course, DC Reeves. And then we've also had communication with Brian Wilkerson on this project as well. So I wanted to talk to you about the Arvada Real-Time Information Center, or the Arctic as we call it. I got this right. And so, I mean, essentially the Arctic is a hub of information that allows us to provide a real and immediate information to those in the field who need it the most. That's essentially what it is. And I'll go into the specifics on it. But you may ask, why do we need the Arctic? How's it going to benefit the city? Well, it will help improve our situational awareness. It'll give us quicker information, as I said, and more accurate information going into a scene. And then it'll also help unify our systems. If you think to the fire at Candelas, 5-6 months ago, whatever that was, I learned in talking to Brian that the fire department didn't arrive with the right improvement when they first arrived. But had they had real-time information, they would have been able to respond quicker and with the right information to be able to address that fire more efficiently. And then I think it'll improve our response times and help us be more proactive as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to help us be more efficient at what we do. And when I say what we do, it's not just the PD, it's all city resources. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But this is a visual depiction of what the Arctic is. And so that's our symbol in the middle for the Arvada Real-Time Information Center. But it'll draw in information from various sources, from drone first responders to surveillance cameras, either from businesses or the city. The city has over 400 cameras out there. Eventually traffic cameras as well. We'll be able to pull in the automated license plate readers that we've talked about in the last few months. And then our police body worn cameras that all our officers have to wear, including me. But we're able to get all that information into the hub. And you kind of think of it as a dispatch center where they'll be able to see this, coordinate with PD response, fire response, emergency response, and then also work with other city departments. And you can see here the Arctic and what it really looks like. For those of you who know where the old dispatch center is, it's on the second floor. If you're walking towards council and you look to the right and you see a couple offices there, that's the old dispatch center. And so we moved our Arctic hub into there. And essentially it's 2 workstations where they'll be able to monitor all these cameras live. And we'll have a technician working that will coordinate through dispatch, coordinate with city services. And our symbols there on the left is what we put on the wall. You'll see that it is the PD, emergency response, fire, fleet services, infrastructure. We're waiting on a symbol for IT and also BCM. So I think you will have heard this term, a real-time crime center in other cities. I think they're selling themselves way too short. This has more benefit than just the PD. It has benefit for all city services, and I'm going to dive into those. But first, let me show you this short video from Skydio. Now, what I didn't start with is that this contract goes in front of you on April 21st for Axon contract. And we'll talk about that in more detail. But Axon contracts with a company called Skydio for their drone first responder program. And this is a 1 to 2 minute video about that drone first responder program.
Skydio dock for X10. Station dock X10s where critical work happens. Get airborne in 20 seconds. Operate remotely from anywhere in the world and get the data you need to act. For public safety agencies, Skydio DFR Command is the ultimate software suite for drone operations. Respond to incidents with a single click. Share live video with ReadyLink. and use augmented reality overlays for precise visual orientation. Manage your fleet, upload evidence, and build community trust. It's all at your command.
The PD has regraded 2 positions to start the Arctic Center. So we have 2 Arctic technicians. One regrade was from a civilian accident investigator. So we had 4 civilian accident investigators. Now we have 3. And one's a technician. And the other position that we regraded was from neighborhood services, an administrative position that we regraded into the Arctic technician. When we look at the number of ways it can help, I've already mentioned one, which is emergency management. Part of our camera system includes a camera on the tower, and that camera is facing west unless it's needed otherwise. And part of that AI can start detecting smoke in the area. So that would alert us automatically if there was a wildfire out there. The other is for those of you who've been around a while, like I have, you may remember the floods back in, I keep getting the year wrong, 2012? 13. I'm close.
You were so
Let's say 14. But that was a major event. And with a drone first responder, we could assess the damage so much quicker than we could have back in 2013. We also had a little semi-hurricane cyclone that ripped through 58th and Oak years ago. I don't remember the year on that. Right. And so for us to be able to assess the damage. Now we have drones in a lot of different areas. We have handheld drones that we can use. But with a drone first responder, we can assess it from here at headquarters immediately without deploying resources in the field. The other area is a structure fire. We've been in communication with the fire department about how this might help them. And I think they're supportive, but I also think they would like to see some use cases to see how valuable it is before hopefully they'll buy in eventually and can help support us in this. But I want to show you this quick video. This was in Lakewood. And what you don't see is the first 2.5 minutes that the drone is watching this house that's on fire. In that time, the fire department is responding to the scene and getting live time updates about what is occurring. When you first see it, you'll see the people evacuating from the house. And then in about 30 seconds, you'll see the fire department arrive. There's no audio. So when the Arctic Center has this drone overhead, they can send a link to the fire captain, that is the unified commander responding to the scene. That captain can then start deploying resources where they need them around this house and have a better understanding 2.5 minutes prior to getting there. And in the fire world and in emergency response, that's a lifetime sometimes. We believe it can help out with our infrastructure. A drone first responder could monitor different traffic conditions to help out with their understanding of patterns. You think of Ralston Valley High School, where we've had a number of issues. Now we've deployed drones up there, but we can work more efficiently and save time by having a drone first responder out there looking at it. It could also help us with our storms, our blizzards, and also when water lines break. We could get a drone up right away, so that if we have to call somebody in, they can immediately see what's going on. Can help us with our utility lines. If we have power outages down, we can get an overhead look at that right away to see what resources are needed to go to this. And I have a structure down here. We all remember a couple of the fires that we had under I-70. We can assess that damage right away to make sure that there's no hazards to the community. We believe it can help with parks, one in crowd management, trying to better understand the activity that's occurring in a park just from a management perspective, or to inspect the sites on a more of a regular basis. Instead of having to drive out there or deploy resources out there, they could go over to the old dispatch center and take a look. they have a sprinkler issue. Instead of sending somebody out there, they can immediately see if they have an issue. Again, improving our efficiency. With our homeless camps, and so you all know that we tag these abandoned camps to understand if people are living in them, letting them know that they need to clean it up. We think that we could probably clear about 10 camps to see if those camps have been abandoned, if we need additional resources out there, or maybe we need to deploy navigators out there to contact people, or maybe we need to deploy a cleanup crew to clean up something. And so with a drone first responder and coordination, we can look at multiple camps in the time we could look at one. And then, of course, the police department. We believe this will be a game changer for us. It will help us on our calls for service, responding for calls for service. It'll help with officer safety. Whenever someone were to flee from us, we would have immediate eyes to be able to assess the situation. Some of you may have remembered an ambush that occurred in Lakewood years ago. Basically, a guy called, said he was going to shoot officers that responded to the scene. There were two ways into this location, one from the west and then one from the east. The two officers arrived, did exactly what they should have. They stopped far away and kind of walked in, but as they walked in, they got ambushed. One of them got hit and significantly impacted her career. But with a DFR, a drone first responder, we could have that drone up overhead, thermal imaging. We could say, yep, there's a guy in the bed of his truck with a gun. You need to stay out of that area. Those things like this will be very valuable for us, officer safety wise. There are two examples. There are more what they call real-time crime centers, but for our Arctic in other agencies. Castle Rock has one, but we've talked particularly with Greeley and Lakewood. You can see in Lakewood's calls for service over that time since April, they've been able to clear 41% of their calls without sending an officer. And what that means is that you may have a suspicious person or a suspicious vehicle. The call load is very busy that night. So instead of just stacking it up, they can send a DFR over there and say, nope, that person's gone, or no, that person is there. You need to go contact them. And so it saves our resources. And as you all know, it's been difficult to get staffing, and this could significantly help with that. On the Greeley side, you'll see that they don't have a DFR yet. I think they just got it this month. But they're using intersection cameras. They have 125 and 250 city cameras. And they have been able to clear about 300 calls just with that alone. So it has a significant impact on the resources for the police department. The contract that you'll see on April 21st does a number of things. First, it replaces existing technology that we have. So we're just bundling it all in one. And we think we're saving quite a bit with that. Body-worn cameras, our tasers, our Axon interview room, which is where people would get interviewed inside the police department. Fleet 3, which are cameras, basically dash cams on traffic unit vehicles. And then our evidence.com, which is how we send videos and digital technology up to the courts. And then we're adding a couple services like our draft 1 that we've talked about to help officers be able to do their reports, and then some virtual reality headsets. But it's also adding to the Arctic, which is 3 drone first responders. So we'll have 2 here at City Hall, and essentially 2 are needed because there's about a 22-minute lifespan on the battery. So once it goes out, if it needs to be replaced, it can swap out with the other one. The third DFR is at Adam. And so we'll have a significant portion of the city, but not all of it covered with those DFRs. And then we need the docking stations that are associated with it, and then the software to run all of that, which is called Fusus. You may ask, how are we paying for this? Well, we've been able to incorporate this into our budget. And so we've been able to do it a number of ways. The first I've already spoken about. We've regraded those 2 positions. So that's at a no cost. In fact, we're getting a little bit money back because the technician position isn't as much as the civilian accident investigator. The second way we're helping fund this is through some seizure money, and we're using that to build the Arctic Center, which is the old dispatch area. I think we've allocated about $100,000 for that technology. And then lastly, we entered a deal along with the other Jefferson County agencies with Jefferson County Schools, where they reimburse us half the cost of our school resource officers. And so if you didn't know, we have the second most SROs in the county with the sergeant, what do we have, 10? So we're basically getting 500,000 that we're applying from the reimbursement from the school district to the Arctic program. And so at the end of the day, the PD has been able to absorb this within our own budget. As I mentioned, this isn't just a police system, it's a whole citywide system. So once we get it up and running, we are going to have training sessions with the other department heads to try to really understand their needs. We threw out some here that I talked about, which I think are viable options for them, but there may be other things that they know that I don't about their workflow, and trying to help them understand how we can better collaborate with them so that we can make their services more efficient. I've asked Patty to give a brief overview on some of the legal issues regarding the Arctic.
Yeah, so I'll just come out and say it is aerial surveillance such as this is perfectly legal, not only in the state of Colorado, but in the United States. In fact, aerial surveillance, I keep saying video surveillance, aerial surveillance was first litigated back in the 1980s in the form of helicopters, if you will. Obviously, this is a different technology, but does a similar type of thing. Just like any other search that the police department were to do, or any government agency, if you will, the same Fourth Amendment protections apply, whether or not we're using a drone, whether or not it's officers with boots on the ground looking for something. All of this will be operated within the parameters of the Fourth Amendment. In fact, the drones fly at an altitude that is actually owned and operated, for lack of a better description, by the federal government, the FAA. So our drones have to be registered with the FAA. I know Jason has been working on that application. Those flight plans are often, I think not often, all the time, are public record that they can be reviewed. I don't know if you noticed in the video that we showed you, but the technology itself, as it dispatches from the top of our building up to the altitude that is owned and operated by the FAA, it is designed to be at a horizon level. So it is not incidentally video capturing before it gets up to the altitude of the 200 to 400 range that they operate in, that is owned and operated by the FAA. That's a technology, A, that helps it fly, but B, has the additional effect of not incidentally recording things that we don't want it to record. Obviously, where the drone is being dispatched and what it's being used for, different nuances within the Fourth Amendment applies. For example, similar to surveillance cameras that we own and operate in public spaces, there is not a right to privacy in a public space. So if we're doing crowd control at a park, for example, or surveillance over a park, there's less of a right to privacy versus if we are dispatching it to a home type of situation. And again, that would have to be operated within the parameters of the law.
We are going to host a few community meetings to talk about this with the public that wants to come, very similar to what we did with the flock cameras a year plus ago. So the first meeting is on April 23rd. That'll be here at headquarters. We made a change since we submitted this slide, but I believe it's April 21st. Or is this right?
It's updated, yep.
Okay, all right, so this is accurate. So those dates are right, and we'll be advertising this on our social media as well, get word out to the community. And I think lastly, what I've shown you is the whole package of what the Arctic has to offer, but we will be going with a phased in approach because of just some of the IT challenges that this presents. And so we're going to start with the drone first responder. What I haven't also talked about is municipal courts. As you've heard from Judge Kurtz, at times there are some safety issues in there, and we've implemented other areas to help address that. But when a technician's on, they'll be able to monitor the courtroom as well. And then the integration with our CAD system, so we can communicate with the officers, and then also the body-worn cameras. Phase 2 will look to incorporate existing city cameras and then other cameras strategically throughout the cities. So for instance, just today we talked about cameras at the radio tower out west on 7-2. I think we have one on 68. Yep. And then we also have one here. And again, those cameras are very valuable, especially in monitoring for wildlife or wildfires, smoke detection, things like that. And then phase 3 will look to integrate that ALPR technology and other components citywide. So that's the Arctic in a package. Happy to answer other questions. I'm sure you have some.
Can you tell us how many drones we're going to be using as part of this?
Yeah, so we'll have the 3. We'll have 2 stationed at headquarters, and then we'll have 1 at Lake Arbor Station. And that will, like I said, that won't cover the entire city, but it will be a good start.
So in terms of the Fourth Amendment, as you noted, obviously privacy protections in public spaces along the roadways, right-of-ways, that's not as concerning. We've had numerous instances, though, of a fugitive cutting through backyards and hopping fences. How does this play into those rights concerns? If we were to be looking for somebody along a yard line and perhaps get a anti-police household that's pretty pissed we put a drone in their backyard.
Sure. So, oftentimes when we evaluate Fourth Amendment, we do it by comparison to other things. So I'll start with a broad answer, and then I can draw an example from kind of everyday policing. The Fourth Amendment has a number of recognized or known exceptions. One such exception that immediately comes into play there is what is known as hot pursuit, as officers do not violate the Fourth Amendment when they are in literal hot pursuit of a suspect. So go back to your favorite Cops episode in late 90s, early 2000s, right? And it would be officers. Chips. So
P.J. Hooker.
Right.
Friend Bill Shatner.
The same concept to a literal foot pursuit, where if officers were on foot chasing a suspect in hot pursuit, and that suspect was going from backyard to backyard, the same legal justification allowing officers on foot to chase that suspect backyard to backyard is the same legal justification that will apply here.
Okay.
Jason, do you want to talk about the technology that tracks the movement of the drones and how that can be viewed?
Sure. Yeah. So you may have heard some of the details in the video, but the drones, similar to what you see with action sports, they have sensors. So there's obstacle avoidance built in, so they're not running into trees or people, which is great. They also fly autonomously. So it's literally the click of a button. It pulls in all the CAD information for our calls for service, and it's clicking a button, the drone flies to the call itself. Now, anybody in the center, actually one of our patrol-based drone pilots can operate it in the field, so they can take manual control and zoom in the cameras over the target location or continue to track someone or a vehicle. And same thing, there's additional features in there. It's a follow me type technology that's integrated into these drones. Again, similar to action sports where you see the drone that's following a mountain biker down some steep terrain. It's that same type of technology. So the cameras can essentially adhere to a person or a vehicle, and it does the following for the drone pilot itself.
Sorry. What other questions?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's pretty neat. So what is the life expectancy of a drone?
So the docks are roughly 5 years.
Okay.
Drones, depending on usage, are anywhere from 2 to 5. There's a refresh built into that contract. So after 2.5 years, they'll provide, whether it's just a new version of this drone, it's the Skydio X10 drone. If they have a newer version available, they will provide that.
Okay. And then, so that also plays into the updates to software, and can we keep up robustly with our tech services department?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Part of this, we did a technology review with them. So we've worked hand in hand with our IT department just to make sure we're considering their workload and their ability to manage this technology.
Okay, and so I hope we get to grow this eventually and we'll be able to cover the entire city because this is a fairly large city in terms of land mass. And I can see where this would be really useful in places like Canyon Pines in case a fire starts. So how are we building to that, I hope?
Well, this is the first step, and I would certainly hope that we will eventually build out so that we can get the whole city covered. I think with multiple cameras, additional DFRs, and then additional personnel, because the value of this system isn't just having the video, it's having somebody to be able to recognize it and dispatch the personnel needed to address whatever issue it is.
That's great. I think this is going to be perfect for emergency services and incident control.
So, I've been following Lakewoods. My day job, we're interested in this too. But are these drones, are they distinguished with like red and blue lights? So that's a police drone up there or first responder drone? Or are they just red and green?
They have red and blue, and then what some other agencies have done is they've added a decal on there. So if they do happen to make an emergency landing,
You know whose it is.
you know whose it is. Yeah. And they're also equipped with a speaker, so we can yell at people.
Oh,
to stay
wow.
away.
The people-
Nicely.
Please stop. Stop
filming
running.
you.
Well, with the motorbikes out west, I was always
Oh,
thinking
yeah.
this would be a good test pilot to lock on. You'll know where they live.
Oh.
I want the fines for the parents to come in to court.
Oh,
mandatory.
That's a good point. There's a lot of those violations that,
You'll never
pursue, we
chase them.
can't chase.
You can't.
You'll never-
They just want.
Betting off fireworks.
Exactly.
Oh,
Betting on
God.
fireworks.
But I know that's
Seriously.
minor stuff. I mean, Lakewood's done a great job in this area. They've really kicked the tires on this. So I'm supportive of the program completely from the DFR perspective. But from the Arctic perspective, I know it sounds still fresh, and I know you've been working on it for a while. Do you only have 2 employees in there? And are they only there together, or are they there 24 hours a day, or how's that?
So they've actually tested and gotten those assignments, but we haven't put them in there until we get the equipment to help them do the job. But I would envision that they are going to split the week, probably with a early swings type schedule initially. I mean, ideally, I would love to have more personnel, as I mentioned, at least 4 and a supervisor, so that we could cover, the vast majority of the day, maybe not 24 hours, but maybe 20 of those hours.
So I know you're doing a great job structuring it. My only fear is not having close to 24 hours is you're gonna miss that opportunity that you wish it was up and running. And then does that create a failure and not a success?
I think Lakewood, I think they only have 1 or
Do they?
2. Yeah, they don't have it fully staffed. And then the other opportunity that we'll have is people on light duty. So we'll be able to use them in that assignment. So instead of doing some of the phone calls that they do now, they'll be able to go up there and assist us with that.
And the other question is just being so skinny in this room, I just see somebody doing a DFR, and then are you missing the rest of the city? Is there another issue going on? And the person's focused on flying the drone. So I just worry a little bit about that. I'm not trying to make an empire in there. I'm just saying, person's focused on one thing, there's going to be failures. So I hope we all are level set that it won't be perfect.
Yeah, sure.
It won't capture 100% of
Right.
the Arctic, I'm talking as a whole, because you have a lot of things going on there. And that being said, have you considered, or are you considering, and maybe this is a Jason's question, data fusion to get multiple data sources so you know where to pinpoint the problem? So you're not hunting for the problem, like in a patrol car, you actually get told through data fusion where there's an incident. Are you looking at that technology?
Yeah, and I think one of the best models that's out there is the NYPD has an actual fusion center.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where this will model towards.
Okay.
I think being in the explorative phase, as you know, it's very complicated when you turn it into a full fusion aspect. But I think having the technicians, once they get in there and become more familiar with the concept and the understanding, they're going to be the ones that provide that fusion for us through recommendation.
Yeah.
And then just to go back a little bit on the 24-hour, know that these DFRs, if we have a DFR pilot on patrol, but the Arctic doesn't have an operator in there,
They can
they
dispatch it.
can have that their own dispatch that applies autonomously and then still see it. Now, it has to be a DFR pilot. But we have, I think,
So you have some that are patrol.
12 of them.
We have 8 on patrol, and then they're doing a new process right now.
Yeah, so there will be pilots on every shift. So the DFRs, even when the Arctic is not manned, will have that ability to support us.
Sorry, what is fusion?
So I'll give you an example of data fusion like I'm looking at. We take, can I use it real quick, what I'm using, so we all on the same page? I'm looking at a system where what you do is you take Apple data, Google Maps, TomTom, and
Ways.
Waze, and then you take the video feeds, and you fuse it together to geospatially know where there's an incident, and I'm looking for traffic incidents. And it will narrow it down to within 1 inch of where the incident happens. And if I have no cameras, I can use a trust factor of say 3 of the 5 data
Points.
to know that there is a crash on Wolf Creek Pass where I have no cameras. And I can confidently let the local law enforcement know that there's something wrong in that area with a level of confidence.
So part of what we contracted with isn't just the DFRs and the docking stations, but the third application is Fusus. And that is for the Axon software, Skydio software to help
Pull it all in.
manage this. And so it does a lot of what you're talking about.
So Fusus will pull a lot of it together. Okay. Yeah, because sometimes it's hard for the human to be the fusion all the time, where if you have a system helping.
I know we talked about having like an officer out in the field that's qualified to fly these, and those are good when we have to, but there is benefit of having somebody separated from the scene that can be kind of an overwatch and not somebody who's involved in it.
Sense.
What other questions?
This is awesome. One of my personal principles is like safety is non-negotiable, and I adore when things are more efficient. So this kind of puts that all together. But I do think that with the ALPR conversations and what we've seen, it sort of gave us a temperature on the conversation and where the community sits. So a previous question I had asked was, what is our next transparency improvement? And one of the mentions was community meetings. So I see the community meetings we have listed. Are we going to provide other opportunities as we implement that? I always think, where's the opportunity to educate, because knowledge takes away fear. So how are we kind of having those conversations?
Yeah, I think one of the things that my sector commanders is getting more of a regular cadence. I think when I talk to all of you, one of the issues we have with the ALPRs is, we'd had them for 20 years and we didn't hear this outcry. So we really didn't think a lot about it. By the time the outcry came, anything we'd done would have been looked like lobbying. And so one of the things that the sector commanders and I have talked about is having more of a regular cadence of meetings with the communities like this, regardless of whether or not it's a hot topic, and regardless of whether one person attends or 20, being able just to have that opportunity. The other good thing about this is the software has a transparency portal. So every flight that this drone takes will be publicly available to them to get on there on a public facing and see where the drone went.
Will it be linked to your
what time?
your police website?
Yeah, it'll be a part of the whole website. And so we're going to look at adopting more of the transparency websites that the manufacturers are bringing on. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing as technology has continued to evolve. The manufacturers are finally catching on and saying, we also need to have a transparency side of this. And so we will automatically bring on the Axon drone transparency when it comes to Flock or LSAG or any of the LPRs. We're still waiting to see what does that transparency look like, or is it better a message coming from us? So I think it's quite fluid and it's quite regular, but we've entered a different era where we now recognize we need to have a real regular cadence with our community on what we're doing as a police department.
Awesome. And I'm sure you already know this, but I think it's always great to have like that virtual option, in-person option, so we're able to meet everybody's availability. Thank you. I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, it brings up a good point. I think we'll probably use this as a basis for our community meetings and adding another slide on the
Right.
transparency portal.
That's what I was gonna just suggest.
We'll record one of the meetings as well. or maybe not a meeting, but a presentation as well. So there's always a link that's available.
Yeah.
And we'll also look at options for live demonstrations, maybe it's tours down the line, and then having our public information team share some success stories so they can see how it's being utilized in real time.
If there are questions that come up at the meetings, it'd be good to log those. Now, obviously, usually budget questions can usually be combined into one or two, but basically an FAQ, because that gives us a good pulse on where the public's head is at. All right.
Now you kind of started hitting on it, but I noticed your previous employers, Westminster and Jeffco, actually share a lot of their video. I'm surprised you didn't breathe.
You make me sound like I'm crazy.
We love you.
I know where you work, but I've noticed your previous employers were actually sharing body cam and all these footage and demos on like really kind of showing the positive views of why cameras are good and drones are good. And I think I don't see that as much in our social media. Now I'm only on Instagram or LinkedIn, so I don't really see much.
You're on LinkedIn.
But I'm hoping
It's on
we can
Facebook.
start sharing more body cam
You
incidents.
looking at Chase.
And we all look at Chase.
It's Instagram is not the best platform
Yeah.
for that.
So I see a lot, and
Yeah.
you know, if I don't do Facebook, that's just everyone wants to kill you or hate you or.
It's a
whatever.
different
Yeah.
crowd. No, we do try to put out as much video as we can. It is difficult because we do have to consider case sensitivities, the
Yeah.
integrity of the case as it goes to prosecution. A lot of these videos need to be redacted. And I can't speak for other departments, but if we put out a 30-second clip of one incident, Dave and or I review every single second, every minute of every body cam that was on scene, just to ensure that we're not opening the door for something we don't expect.
So,
So it just takes a lot of time.
and I appreciate that,
You try
but I
your
also
brain.
appreciate when I see, you know, the officers rescuing somebody and showing that they have body cam and there is transparency, because it goes to saying, well, now I know they have cameras, or I see the drone showing the fire. When you start sharing that information with the public, you're like, hey, I'm sharing, this is what we've been doing. So when they say, well, I didn't know there's drones, well, hey, we've been posting drone images on social media. Why don't you know this? I think those are the transparency I think you can overcome very easily. And I get all the legal perspective. You don't want to show a body, you don't want to show faces, but there's something to be said about just showing your tools and demonstrating those tools and showing your positive, like you rescued the dog or you rescued an old lady out of a house or whatever the case is, they are impactful. Because, you know, the officers, I think they since retired, but the ones that ran in and down on 58th and they did that whole show on, what was that name of the,
Viking Square Apartments down
Yeah,
at 58th and
but
Vancouver.
the show was,
It was an Axon produced.
show. That's impactful, man.
Did
Way
you-
impactful.
On, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving. We put out body cam of our officers kicking out the basement window to pull
Yes.
the guy out,
Yes,
stuff like that.
yes. I think we need that more kind of consistently because I think that right there is transparency.
And I was gonna add real quick on the educating the public. We've already published a full-page article in the Arvada report from February and March, just about the Arctic. In April, May, that just came out. It's mentioned in a blurb about our annual report. And then in our annual report that just came out, there's another mention in an article about technology and innovation. So we're already kind of pre-educating the public.
And that included the Arctic and ALPRs.
And draft one
And draft.
and facial recognition technology as well. So we have the community meetings that we will advertise on our social media through the neighborhood leaders group, Arvada News. We'll do a news flash on the city's webpage. So it'll be hard for people to say that they didn't know we were offering these meetings. As Jason mentioned, we'll record a presentation that will be posted on a Arctic specific webpage on the PD site that would include FAQs, the transparency portal once we get that up and running. And then just on an ongoing basis, we'll tell the success stories. We'll invite media in for a sit along as appropriate as we kind of have something to show them. So I think we have a pretty well-rounded transparency and education plan.
Shauna?
Yeah, what was the response to the article publication about the Arctic? What did the community come back in and say? Was there much of a response?
From the Arvada report,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard.
We haven't heard any feedback. And so I was just curious why we're doing public engagement after the contract is signed. Is there like the point of getting public engagement, wouldn't that kind of shape what we would want to have for the contract?
Yeah, you mean doing it ahead of time? Is that what you?
Well, because
Before the
when are we,
contract is
when are we
April
signing?
21st?
Yeah, the contract's April 21st, but all the public engagement meetings are the 21st, the 29th, the 30th.
That's a good point. We just set dates that were available, started talking about them. So I forget what the dates are. We could certainly revisit that until after the contract. Tell your opinion on it
Okay.
and how you vote.
Okay, and then I saw on the slide that there was going to be an audit process. Can you talk about what the audit process is?
Yeah, Jason, you want to talk to us?
So yeah, I mean, we'll do continual monitoring of the flight logs. So speaking about DFR, each time the drone is flown, you have to label the call. So we'll do an audit just to make sure that they're supporting a official law enforcement call for service outside of training flights. So I'll lead the team initially, the team of two, until we identify a better supervision structure. So I'll be responsible for doing that. And then in terms of there's also records requests. So when you talk about camera and video surveillance, you're going to get a lot of potential third party and then internal video requests. So we'll stay up to speed with, records release policies, both within the state and our internal policy. Does that cover?
Yeah,
the auditing questions? Yeah.
My question is about, I'm thinking about privacy because I think it's fine for us to have, PD just looking at these feeds. But the problem with Axon and Flock that the public has been upset about is these third parties being able to access Flock data or being able to access Axon data. So just like I appreciated the oversight where it's like only Arvada.org has access to it. You have a transparency page on Flock that lists all the agencies. So I assume for this system, it would be those same list of agencies that would have access and we would be transparent about that. And, you put that the data only stays in the system for 14 days. And then after that, you have like the logs of where it was applied, but you don't actually have the data, right?
Gotcha. So the good thing with this product, the data is ours, so it's not shared.
Great.
Yeah. So there's no database that's shared with other law enforcement agencies. Now we could release a piece of evidence. So if there was maybe an incident that happened in another city and it spilled into our jurisdiction, and we utilize the drone to help with that apprehension, we could release that video through them, and that's done through evidence.com, and that would be part of the district attorney's discovery process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Another question I have is, do we have a full no pursuit policy or is it partial? It's partial, right? So with this the no pursuit policy?
We pursue on certain violent crimes.
Okay, so would this help change that policy at all? Because we wouldn't need to pursue because we would have the DFRs, or do we change that?
I don't know that it would change it entirely. It would assist us with that because the battery life on these DFRs is only 22 minutes. At some point, it would
Right.
run out.
Yeah.
To continue.
Okay,
And usually the immediate apprehension. So yeah, we haven't discussed that, but I don't know that we would change it.
okay. And then I noticed on the slide that the public misconception is that this would not be general surveillance. So how are you planning to present to the public? Like what is the definition of general surveillance and how are you not doing that? And what are the safeguards against that?
Yeah, I think as part of our outreach to the community, just talking and what Patty said, that we won't inadvertently be surveilling properties as we go over them in an outdoor call. And that we're just not gonna put it up to monitor a house. Things like that. And so I think that just goes with our public outreach.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate the, look at all this technology. I always think of Terminator and it's coming down, but I recognize yeah, exactly. The practical applications are immense. I mean, I actually am really kind of interested in the conversation about infrastructure evaluation and inspection. I think that could be really interesting. I start to think about even something as simple as code enforcement or looking at STRs that are in violation. All that's down the road. The only thing I would add is that in addition to the transparency budget, think about this would be super cool if you're in school and like APD came out and did a demo and flew the drone around and just like let the students interact a little bit like that.
Yeah.
We do a yearly, this is just one school, but we have our Three Creeks Middle School Career Fair coming up.
Okay.
And we do a drone presentation every year, and that's a big hit. The dog supersedes and take that. It's always the big hit. It's very cool.
Hey, sidebar on that. You mentioned we do it with Three Creeks, but we have several middle schools
We
in
do.
the state and
Yeah.
in the city and the high schools. Do we reach out to them to see if they have any interest? Because what I've noticed is a lot of them do these things, but they don't think to email us.
Yeah. We did one with North Arvada Middle School this past year. Forge Christian does one every year that we participate in. So it organically, a lot of times it's when we have an SRO assigned to the school and they set up an actual formal career fair, they link up with the SRO and say, hey, come and set up a table and do a demonstration. The Three Creeks one, there's just a bigger demonstration. But yeah,
Who's the SRO?
right now at Three Creeks,
Yeah.
Kelly LaChuca.
Do we have other city drone assets that we use for things?
Yes.
We do?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Media
thinking,
Services has a cool one.
okay, I was wondering, like, I mean, if we have like a big outdoor event, I mean, just being there with the drone and taking pictures of the event.
Yeah, we
There's
do
a
that.
picture that kind of hinted at that. I think that would be a really cool use. And if APD is doing that with some of these resources, it sort of shows the community that there's more than just a law enforcement application. And I think that's important.
We have, what, a dozen drones, handheld drones?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they fly during the
So
process.
interior one year.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's different. The other.
Yeah, they send them in the source.
It's like,
Yeah,
it has a.
we
fly out.
Sorry, can we have one mic? I can't hear multiple.
I was just saying with our command van, we also have a periscope that we've used at times at the 4th of July to kind of help us, monitor for safety and medical issues, the crowd.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaking of 4th of July again, would we be using these for those like fireworks violations, some of the lower or STR violations if we get a report of a house party for some of these lower level violations?
Well, we've talked about it in the past. I think we need to think through that, make sure that we fully understand that we're going to use it because it does go into, okay, are we surveilling over areas? I think for people lighting off fireworks, I think there's a legitimate argument too, but there's also the public perception that we are monitoring just general surveillance. So I think that we need to fully flush that out.
I meant when we get calls specifically. So at this address, my neighbor is setting it off. I didn't know if we were going to be reserving these more for, public danger or whatnot, or will nuisance crimes also be used?
Yeah, I think as we dive into it and we start getting up, we'll have to see what the capabilities are and how many calls we can actually send it. I mean, sending it around 24 hours a day might not be good for the technology. So we may have to discriminate between what we're going to use it for and what we're not going to.
Okay.
Well, in our ordinance on that, I think if the complaint is willing to be signed for the address, isn't the owner of the address liable?
that one right there.
Yeah, so it kind of defeats the need to have, because it
Yeah.
holds the property owner accountable.
Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.